Well, technology is certainly driving huge changes in the economy, not just increasing productivity. Many low-skilled jobs have been replaced by machines. But what about the impact of the newer, growing sharing economy? The appeal to workers of services like Uber, Airbnb and TaskRabbit are easy to understand. Flexible hours, being your own boss. But is there a dark side to these arrangements, such as income instability or the loss of employee benefits? Well, back with me to discuss this is Nell Abernathy, Ed Conard. At this point, I want to bring in David Mandel. You're from Pivot Desk, a company that essentially helps people share office space, connects small office spaces with people who need it.
That's correct. We actually try to help entrepreneurs find room to grow their businesses. One of the biggest barriers they deal with is simply real estate and understanding how to grow your business when you're hindered by long-term leases and expenses that don't add value to your business.
So, I mean, you're dealing more business to business rather than sort of a consumer-facing service like Uber. But I wanted to pick up on something we heard from presidential candidate, Democratic hopeful Hillary Clinton. In her first economic speech, she decided to talk about the sharing economy, saying she was concerned. I mean, is the sharing economy bad?
No, I think the sharing economy, and by the way, I should say I'm not a big fan of the term the sharing economy. I simply refer to it as the economy. And what we see is a new industry arising that's breaking down barriers that traditionally stopped people from getting access to income, resources, et cetera, that were harder to get to before, are now actually very, very available to people. And I think when you look at any new emerging economy that's changing the way we think about our business, there's always concerns because those businesses are going to leverage the opportunities that exist within the economy. And as they grow, regulation will form and change. When they're new and they're coming on fast, obviously we have to watch them closely, especially when you see entrenched companies that are very comfortable making a lot of money, all of a sudden see their market share being taken by these new startups. So they're going to leverage their power and wealth to put regulation in place to try and crush that. So I don't see it as a bad economy at all. I see it as really an enabler.
I mean, it is a shift in the economy we're seeing right now, driven by technology, where you've got, for every Steve Jobs or Elon Musk of Tesla or other firms, obviously huge rewards for great inventions. But a lot of the technical advances, if you look at manufacturing, for example, also result in the need for less people or potentially for less employment. I mean, I don't know.
I think if you look at history, there have been waves and waves of labor-saving technology. So the tractor in agriculture pretty much wiped out all the labor in agriculture. Automation and capitalization in manufacturing is doing the same thing. Computerization had a very similar effect. We've had waves of offshore workers and immigrants coming. So people who fear that the robots are coming, the robots already pretty much came, okay? And we continue to find alternative uses for labor. If you would have said 20 years ago that one of the fastest growing industries is going to be brewing coffee 1 cup at a time and swirling milk in it, and that the cost of living would be so low that we would be able to afford that today, I think we would have all thought that that was crazy, that that was nuts. There's no way that labor would be redeployed that way and be economically successful. And yet it continues to occur. Will it continue to occur forever? Nobody knows. But has it historically worked and increased standards of living? Because in part, why does a tractor take over? When a farmer gets a tractor, all the other farmers don't starve to death. They become doctors and lawyers and school teachers and truck drivers because they're paid with food, and food is now very, very cheap. And so the value of doing other tasks besides farming becomes more valuable, not less valuable. And that's why today we can brew coffee 1 cup at a time. And it turns out to be surprisingly valuable in the scheme of things.
Well, David, you're our entrepreneur on the panel. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think obviously you can look at it top down as economists do, or you can look at it bottom up as I do, as I work with entrepreneurs and other people that are trying to actually build businesses and support their family. And I think what you see happening is that the technology that's enabling the sharing economy or other opportunities is creating new opportunities that didn't exist before. And yes, you can say heavy manufacturing has moved overseas, but what we've seen in response to that is a huge increase in small micro manufacturing happening in the US because that's where the opportunity is. And as long as you can enable people to create opportunity and to go after things they couldn't go after before because the barriers were there. They couldn't find the right office, or they couldn't have access to technology, or they couldn't get access to capital. those are the things that stop the economic growth. So I think we have to look at these enabling technologies as simply a way of evolving the way we work, the way we live, and creating new opportunities for people that never had them before. And yes, you could certainly make the case that maybe they're not the high-paying jobs that we are led to believe are consistent with the American dream, but they're stepping stones and they're opportunities that may give you the opportunity to get there.
But Michelle, I think you're getting at a very important economic trend which is occurring. If you go back to the 1950s, we were capitalizing on mass markets in manufacturing, capital-intensive companies like General Motors and Procter & Gamble, and they were creating very stable, long-term jobs. Those companies have gone away and we've been replaced by a much more entrepreneurial, riskier economy. An economy that needs more equity, by the way, in order to grow, but also one where everyone, from employees at the bottom to leaders at the top, have a more unstable employment career life than they've had in the past.
And I think that my friends here may bring up some excellent points, but I would say their view is a little bit rosier than one that I have and many of my colleagues. There's much to be said for the new flexibility and entrepreneurship we see in the sharing economy. However, the increase in economic insecurity has been a real challenge. And you brought up the Industrial Revolution. We saw in the fundamental change of the Industrial Revolution, a new set of institutions develop that provided economic security to Americans. And those were largely built around an employer-employee relationship that may no longer be the defining relationship of our time. That doesn't mean we don't need institutions that provide economic security. We just might need new ones. And there are many existing ones that can also work. I think we can still raise the minimum wage. We can do massive investment in early childhood education. If everyone's going to have to grow up and be an entrepreneur, we better prepare them with, from age 0 on, the creativity and adaptability to do that. And then we might need to rethink new kinds of employee classification that allow a company like Uber to provide benefits that are perhaps prorated or things like this. But there is certainly, I don't think Silicon Valley is going to develop an app to deal with inequality. There's a huge role for institutions, rules, and regulations to ease this transition for the average American.
I would say you have developed that very app, by the way. But
and I would completely agree with you, by the way. I wouldn't argue with anything you just said. And I think the point is we need to stop thinking about the support systems and the regulations the way we've traditionally thought about them, because they don't answer and serve the existing economy.
Well, I'm afraid that is all we have time for, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Nell Abernathy, Ed Conard, and David Mandel. Thank you for being such good sports.